And then I'll hit record and we'll get started.
Great.
And can you see the slides?
Right now I can't.
Okay.
They just grayed out.
Oh, yeah, because I just went to Facebook. So it said paused. So I'm just going to Facebook Live and it will stream what we're doing there.
Very cool.
Yes, that's why this is a practice session. But good.
Doesn't seem like practice to me. Seems like there's an audience.
Yeah, there is. Okay, so I'll go live on Facebook. All right, can you see the slides now?
Yep, they're back.
Okay, so we will begin and I will just have the slides. So we'll go through and then you can just tell me when to switch the slide when you're talking, but.
Perfect.
All right. Hey guys, it's Debbie Potts and we are doing a live webinar and Facebook Live to learn new ways to train the whole athlete to improve performance and longevity. So I brought my friend Matt Bach on the webinar today to talk about how to use UCAN to improve your performance in endurance sports, as well as other sporting events that might be shorter distance, more higher intensity heart rate. And we're going to kind of dive into some of the common questions we've heard people ask on Facebook and at seminars, and what we learned from Ironman Hawaii when we did our low carb athlete seminar there live. So thanks, Matt, for coming on the webinar today and going into what UCAN does for the endurance athlete.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Debbie. It was fun in Kona, getting to meet you in person and do the event together. That was a good time.
Yeah, it's our first annual event on how to become a fat adapted athlete. So we'll have it next year. We just all have to get back to Kona. And I am going to show you guys slides. We're going to talk about kind of UCAN one-on-one. And what we do, if you are on the webinar live, you can go see there's a little panel Q&A questions and we can take polls. So we've got 5 people on the line. So far, so good. We got question and answers on there that I put on there ahead of time so we can find out what you are looking for as an endurance athlete. So that's under the polls. So low carb athlete, are you a fat adapted athlete? What type of sports are you training for? And then what type of fuel are you using now as an endurance athlete? You don't need to be a fat adapted athlete necessarily right now, but we're just trying to teach you how to be more metabolically efficient and how do you do that? And then how do you work on improving your metabolic flexibility? So Matt, I'll let you take it over and I'll just move the slides as you need it and dive into what UCAN does for our performance and giving us fuel and keeping our blood sugar stable.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, why this all made sense to kind of come together and do this with Debbie and I is because UCAN has found a really strong foothold in the fat adapted community because of many of the features of UCAN or what underlies UCAN, which is a complex carbohydrate called superstarch. So the idea here is to kind of go over some of what UCAN is, why it fits in with that fat adaptive community, tell my own story with fat adaptation and also with using UCAN and how those two things combine to form some really solid performance improvements for me, and in the ways that many people use it in their own stories, like creating their own stories out there and reaching their own new levels. So we try to answer some of the questions that people have, which I think you have up right here. Do we want to start out with the questions or do we want to go into? Great.
So I won't start with them. I just put them in the beginning so people can know, okay, here's what we hear you asking about on social media and at our event in Kona, and then we'll go into them again at the finish. So type in your questions for us. I want to make sure we address everything. So just kind of what we have heard so far. And if you have different questions than that, you can type them in and we'll leave the 15, 30 minutes to talk about questions at the end. So we'll just kind of go into the science behind it and what metabolic efficiency is all about.
Great.
Okay, so let me change slide. Whoops, too fast. So take it from here. Let's talk about Jonah.
Sure. Yeah. So if anybody's not familiar with what the origin story of UCAN is, I love it, and it really helps to explain what it is, what is Superstarch, and how it all came about. It's really a company that was created from a purpose, a very specific purpose, and not just some sort of commercial thing to try to fill a market need and make money off of it. It was devoted to this kid named Jonah back in the early days of our company. So in the 2000s, Jonah was living, or is living, with a rare metabolic disorder called glycogen storage disease. And he's actually the inspiration for the beginnings of our company. So what this disease means for him is he can't process glycogen the same way that we can. And the best way that they had found back in the 70s to manage this disease was to have Argo cornstarch off the shelf every 2 to 3 hours, including through the night. And it's a life-threatening disease. So if he doesn't receive a feeding at the right time, even if it's just barely late, his blood sugar could fall to dangerously low levels. He could have seizures and he could die. And there's only about 3,000 kids in the US that have this disease, and about 30,000 globally, which means that it's rare, and pharmaceutical companies don't really pay attention to this very much because it's not really like a big money-making opportunity for them. So it goes kind of unmanaged, and for a long, long time, they haven't been able to find any way to cure it or anything. So the parents of Jonah, Wendy and David Feldman, back in the 2000s, decided to put together a foundation to try to find a cure, or find at least a better way to manage this disease that is inhibiting their lives and disrupting their lives in a big, big way. I mean, the sleep deprivation that they must be having, or had back then, must be incredible. So what ultimately happened, they had funded some research to try to find this cure or this better way to manage it. What ultimately happened in 2008 was that a team of Scottish researchers developed a way to take non-GMO cornstarch, a very specific species or strain of it, elongate that molecule through a patented process. It's a cooking process, and it's being fed, or it was going to be fed to newborns. So it needed to be extremely natural, no chemicals. It had to be very, very clean. And so it was non-GMO cornstarch. They just used heat and water and pressure, all natural process. Over 40 hours, they're able to elongate the molecule to epic proportions. So I'll go into that in just a moment. But this story with Jonah, now he has 2 to 3 servings of UCAN or Superstarch before he goes to bed, and he gets sleep through the night, 8 hours straight. And that the first time he was able to do that when he was 9 years old. And so his parents had dealt with 9 years of very difficult, and he had to deal with some very difficult times managing this disease, but finally was able to sleep through the night by having this stable energy source, this stable blood sugar. And so the Scottish researchers, it was deemed Superstarch, and our co-founders decided, okay, now that we have this breakthrough in carbohydrate technology, is there something else that we can do with this? Are there other applications for this long-lasting supply of energy? And so they went to Bob Seebohar back in 2008, and they said, okay, this is what we've got. Is this interesting to you as an endurance athlete? And he said, absolutely. If this does half of what you're claiming, it could potentially revolutionize the sports nutrition industry. So he started using it on himself. He used it with his athletes and found that it was truly living up to the claims that our co-founders were making. And he said, you got to do something with this. You got to spread the word. This could really help a lot of athletes fix some of these issues that happen in endurance sports. And so from there, we formed it into a company in 2012. And since then, we've had some dramatic growth because it truly is something different in the marketplace. So to put that into perspective here, I like to tell stories and tell the Jonah story first. And I want to tell kind of my story and the way that I came to UCAN, because it highlights a lot of the reasons why UCAN is compelling for endurance athletes. So on the left-hand side, you see that's the former me before I became fat adapted, before I started using UCAN. And I was using, you name it, I tried it, all these different sports gels, sports drinks. I tried just about everything out there, and I found that the experience for me was basically the same. And that's because the underlying ingredients are basically the same for all these products. It's either simple sugars or it's maltodextrin in just about every one of these. I think every one of these that I have listed.
I think I've tried about most all of those myself when I started figuring this out too.
And so I was having problems in my first 4 Ironman events in particular. I was a triathlete starting in 2010. I did my first half Ironman in 2011, and I did a full Ironman in 2012. And particularly at the Ironman distance, when you're out there for so many hours and you're consuming tons and tons of sugar, that's what I was doing when I started, because that's what everybody was telling me. That's what you're supposed to do. So I was targeting 300 calories an hour. I was taking in all this sugar. And then during my Ironman events, I was having major GI distress, bonking episodes in the later stages, especially of the race, like towards the end of the bike or on the run. And it was frustrating because I went in there really fit and ready to rock it. And then I'd have nutrition holding me back. I'd be walking large chunks of the marathon, really affecting my performance. And I knew there's got to be some better way. But for the first 4 Ironmans, I just kind of went with it thinking that was the only way. But eventually was frustrated enough that I decided to explore other options. And I spoke with Nikki Schock. She's a sports nutritionist who's a disciple of Bob Seebahar, a metabolic efficiency training specialist, which is a form of fat adaptation. I started working with her on my daily diet to try to become more fat adapted. And she also recommended UCAN to me. And I had never heard of it before, but decided to give it a try because she's my sports nutritionist. And I was like, she tells me to try something, I should just go do it. So I went and I tried it. And I noticed anecdotally in my training that I was having some success with it. I felt steady. I felt that energy just, later on in my workouts, I was feeling strong all the way through. I also noticed that I wasn't having issues with GI distress, although in my training, I usually didn't experience it all that often because most of my workouts aren't long enough to the point where I'd have lots and lots of sugary sports nutrition that would then cause issues because usually the first one goes down easy and then it kind of gets a little harder from there. Especially once you get to like your 8th or 9th gel, then you're just looking at them. Like, it's like nauseous just looking at them. And so the real test was going to be in an Ironman. So I did my first Ironman about 3 or 4 months after working with Nikki. I did my first Ironman. It was my first Ironman using UCAN. I had no GI distress and no bonking for the first time ever in my Ironman racing. I had less than 100 calories an hour. And that was a combination of the fact that UCAN is an efficient, steady energy, release of energy versus your other options, and also because of being fat adapted. I was really able to reduce the amount that I needed to consume in order to fuel myself optimally, and therefore avoided some of these major problems that I was having with GI distress and bonking. So I had a major performance breakthrough. I ran 20 minutes faster than I'd ever had on the run because I didn't have any low energy points or GI distress. I biked I think it was 25 minutes faster than I'd ever biked before. I went 8 hours and 51 minutes and I won the whole race. And It completely blew my mind. Mm-hmm. Never thought I'd win an Ironman. And it was such a massive breakthrough, especially nutritionally. That was one of the biggest pieces that changed that year.
You were a professional athlete? That's when you won?
No, I was an age group athlete. And mm-hmm. This Ironman Maryland in 2014 is where I won. And that was the first race that Ironman put out that didn't have a pro field. So as you know now, there's a number of Ironman races that have a pro field and there's a number that don't. And mm-hmm. Ironman Maryland did not. And that was the first ever race that was like that.
Nice. Yeah, I started a few years before you because I'm a lot older. So when I started in 2001 doing Ironmans, I was similar story for years about trying to try all this different fuel and do what we were told to do is have that 300 calories an hour and just all this. And that's when I started, figuring out how does this make sense when I have fat in my body to use for fuel and I keep putting in all this sugar and then I do a race and I'd be throwing up the whole bike ride trying to get that extra out. So I think I did USA Triathlon Coaching Course certification with and met Bob Seebahar in 2009. And that's when I started to just totally got what he was saying because I was curious about that for, the years before building up to that time when he said, you don't need gels every hour. And I started using UCAN that year until I haven't raced since 2013. But yeah, it's just starting those people that are thinking outside the box. This stuff that I'm told to eat, I keep having GI distress and people think that's normal and they don't think how you're supposed to use fuel that's stored in your body and have this steady energy and have an amazing race like you did and having no bonking. You're not supposed to have that. We're just told, mile 18, mile 20 on the run, you're going to bonk. And I think people just think that's going to happen to them, and realize we can help that with
Yeah.
UCAN and training.
And I like what Bob Seebauer says. He says, it's, people used to think, and I think a lot of people still do think, that it's almost a rite of passage to
Yeah.
have GI distress during your longer training and racing. And
You're a real athlete if you throw up.
Yeah, right. Right. So you just don't need to. And I think another thing that would really, that this community would be interested in hearing is my experience with working with Nikki, and I did a metabolic efficiency test. So for me, it worked, and it showed in the numbers. I mean, I felt the difference, but actually I don't have a slide for this one, but it worked because it showed in the numbers. I started with Nikki. I didn't do anything yet with my diet. I took a test. I was on a treadmill with the mask, and it told me that I was burning 60% carbohydrate and 40% fat at Ironman race pace for the run. And then 5 weeks later, only 5 weeks, that's not a lot of time, I made some changes to my diet and I started using UCAN. And then 5 weeks later, I tested again, and I had, at the same pace, Ironman marathon race pace, I was burning 40% carbohydrate and 60% fat. Yeah. So it's depending way more on my fat stores than my carbohydrate, my glycogen stores at race pace. And that means that I'm sparing the limited glycogen stores that you have in your body. I mean, really, just to put it into perspective, you've got about 2,000 calories max of carbohydrate or glycogen in your body, in your muscles, in your liver, and you have tens of thousands of calories of fat. So if you're exploring possibly doing fat adaptation, like just looking at those numbers and understanding that if you can use your fat more and still, optimally move at that pace, then you're going to be using those fat stores, so the fat, to fuel you instead of using as much of the glycogen. It's not like a black or white thing, right? It's not like you're using all fat or all glycogen. It's just you're using a higher proportion of fat in order to fuel you at that same pace. And everybody's different. So for me, it worked. For Debbie, it's worked. For a lot of the people that you hear about that are raving about fat adaptation, it's worked for them. So really, it's you got to test it and just see if it works for you. And same thing with UCAN. Test it, see if it works for you. And if you're having any issues with it, you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to help with any of the troubleshooting and refining that needs to happen as you're kind of exploring it.
Well, I think what we're saying is carbohydrate sparing. So you have two gas tanks, right? We got this huge tank for our fat fuel storage that we should be depending on, instead of our backup storage tank, that rocket fuel that we can have in the backup, the carb storage, the glycogen storage. So I think training the body so we are using that fat fuel, the higher percentage that you said, you can keep improving. I can train at higher heart rates and still burn more and more fat and spare that carbohydrate storage fuel source, so when you need it. But the metabolic efficiency testing that you've done, and I used to do for 10 years until the company got bought out, that it really is good visual aid to show examples like on this slide here. It's just how your energy, is that a picture of the, do you have any slides of the metabolic efficiency testing?
Not in the slideshow, but maybe I could share a picture with you so you could share it as well, or insert it into the slides or something.
Because I think it's a great way to visually see, how are you fueling now? Is it helping your metabolic efficiency and that metabolic crossover point, that we keep expanding that range of the percentage of fat to carbohydrates that you're using for your fuel source, and how UCAN can help that, and how we train to move that up too. So training by heart rate and all that we can talk about another time, but let me not keep talking, let you take over, Matt, on what's this slide about here about energy.
Yeah, so on the left-hand side, you see a chart, and that chart is from an actual study back in the earlier days of our company when we were testing the properties of superstarch. So the red line that you see there is maltodextrin, giving you a spike and a crash profile. The green line is superstarch that gives you the steady energy release. So that just kind of underlies one of the main reasons why the fat adapted community loves UCAN. Because that's a blood sugar chart right there that you're seeing. And the green line is stable blood sugar, relatively stable blood sugar, compared to what you typically get with your maltodextrin or your simple sugars. And so because you have stable blood sugar, your insulin levels stay muted, and therefore it allows you to tap into your fat stores. Whereas with fast-acting carbs, or if you would just eat a piece of cake, it would spike your blood sugar, your insulin levels would rise, and to draw the sugar out of your bloodstream. And when insulin is present in the body, it triggers your body to store fat rather than burn it. So as your body remains in fat burning mode by keeping that stable blood sugar, stable insulin, it allows your body to get better and better at burning fat. It gets used to that and it adapts.
So and that's why I just want to throw in too, that's why I like people to measure their blood glucose, because the main goal is to be burning fat. And to do that, we want to eat and take those fuel sources you can to stabilize the blood sugar. And that's the key takeaway on this slide, I think, is, your goal is to balance your blood sugar and avoid those insulin surges that cause you have that high blood sugar and then low blood sugar and have that bonking and leading to that GI distress you'll get into. But I think it's the main goal is to balance your blood sugar so you keep that steady fuel of fat coming in for your energy source. Do you agree?
Yeah. That's a lot of the crux of why a lot of fat adapted athletes love UCAN and love the whole approach of fat adaptation. Mm-hmm. So in the square on the upper right-hand side, why triathletes love UCAN, or why endurance athletes really love UCAN, is because one thing is it's helping you to avoid GI distress. And the reason why that's happening is because it's really easy on the stomach, but in more numbersy, sciencey talk, it has very low osmolality. So not to get too sciencey, I'll speak in very layman's terms. Osmolality, the lower the better, in terms of how quickly, what it means is how quickly it clears the stomach. So UCAN has extraordinarily low osmolality. So the flavored versions are something about 60 to 66. The unflavored version, the pure 100% super starch, has osmolality of 0 to 1. It's almost non-existent. So it means that it clears the stomach extraordinarily quickly so that you don't get that sloshing. You don't need as much water. Typically on the back of a gel, it says drink 8 ounces of water with this. The reason why you have to do that is because it uses the water as a transporter through the gut, through the stomach, actually, into the gut. With superstarch, you don't need as much of that water to transport it because the osmolality is so low. So it's very easy on the stomach. You don't get that sloshing. You don't get the bloating. You don't get the stomach aches as much with UCAN as you would with other things that have higher osmolality. So you see in that chart the approximate osmolality based off of manufacturer recommendations for how to mix it. And osmolality is really the flip side of the coin of molecular weight, which is really leading into the second square that you see that says no bonking, or really steady energy, long-lasting energy. So molecular weight, like I mentioned before, they have this epic molecule that they've created called superstarch through this cooking process. To put it into perspective, you got these molecular weights here. Simple sugars are about 180, maltodextrin about 500, and superstarch about 600,000. Like, it's a massively different molecule. And people have kind of thought for years now that maltodextrin is considered a complex carbohydrate because its molecular weight is 500 versus 180. But really, like, superstarch is in a whole other realm of complexity. And so what that means, because it is complex like that, it breaks down at a steady rate into your system and doesn't just flood your system with energy and then crash shortly thereafter. Instead, you have this longer lasting release, or seep almost, of energy once it gets into your system.
And then the sugars down the bottom, can you touch them? Because I think if you can compare versus the sugars, maltodextrin versus superstarch, and the fructose and sucrose, how the superstarch is different. You said the molecular weight, but the carbohydrate type and all the gels and the other drinks out there that a lot of times irritate people's gut and the GI distress. But I think the difference of the superstarch is, you're saying, because it balances your blood sugar out, and the melt. So you see the numbers 350, 270 to 0 to 66 is pretty huge difference.
Yeah, definitely. It's so different. It's so massively different. So that's why there's really so much education that needs to be done with superstarch, because it's a different way. It's a new paradigm of fueling. Someone that has some really amazing benefits. I mean, in terms of the GI distress and the fact that it gives you that stable energy is very, very cool. The other reason is because it's that people love it is because even if they have an iron gut, right, they don't have any GI distress, they've never really had problems with bonking because they're just able to suck down all sorts of sugar or whatever it might be that they're taking. People still switch over to UCAN because of the fact that it has either low or no sugar in it. So it's just kind of a healthier way to fuel, right? Instead of sucking in tons of sugar all the time in your training. And you hear of athletes who look fit as anything and they've got type 2 diabetes. You're like, how is that even possible? They're so healthy. but it's because they're, it might be because they're taking in lots and lots of the sugar. So
Well,
having UCAN without that could lead to some better health there.
exactly. And that's my point of always saying performance and longevity. Are you wearing yourself out now and impacting your health that's going to impact your cell health in the future? Because so many people don't realize what they're doing now, how it's going to impact their future life. And, you're taking on all that sugar, you might have some GI stress or no GI stress, but how is that impacting your mitochondria and your cells and all the other type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance that you can get from taking in all those sugars and really speeding up the aging process.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we can go to the next slide.
Yay, Bob.
Yeah, so a number of people here you might recognize. In the pictures, Michael Andrews, the swimmer there, Meb Keflezighi, Bob Babbitt, and Tim O'Donnell, all UCAN fans. Dr. Paul Larson, Hunter Allen, who you may know is the godfather of power meter training and racing. He's been a UCAN fan for many years. Dathan Ritzenhein, another Olympian, and tons of pro sports teams. 12 out of 16 of the teams in the NFL playoffs last year were, all using UCAN. All customers of UCAN, actually, they buy our product. They don't get it for free. So it's really a testament to how different this really is and how compelling it is for those especially in endurance sports, but also in the fitness realm and the more higher intensity fitness realm even.
So can you touch a little bit on T.O.? Because we all know he did amazing race in Kona this year, and he signed on with UCAN to use that as his main fuel source. Can you kind of add a little bit on him? You have a little quote from him here, but tell us a little bit how he uses it and how it really changed his performance, and did an amazing race this year. It was so exciting.
Yeah, that was incredible, and I was luckily on the ground to watch it all go down. And man, he had an amazing day. What's even more amazing about it from my perspective, because I work for UCAN, is the fact that UCAN was a part of that. It really helped him to achieve a new level in Kona this year because he didn't have any low points during the run. So if you notice, he ran the fastest he's ever run before. He broke 250 for the first time off the bike in Kona. He ran 249. He's never been able to do that before because he's always had some sort of GI distress or low energy points during the run. And man, he is a mentally strong guy and a seasoned veteran of the sport. So he's been able to power through essentially, and really so mentally strong that even though he has those low points and has some of that GI distress, he's able to move through it and overcome it and sort of wait it out, essentially, move through it, right? So that he can still perform well. So last year he had some GI distress and some low energy points at around mile 10 of the run, and he still ended up fourth in the race. So that's great, but still there was something left on the table. And this year he was able to use UCAN during the race, before the race, and all throughout the bike, in conjunction with some high glycemic carbohydrates during his racing, because he's actually outputting at such a high level that he uses a combination. And he was able to have an outstanding run with no low energy points and no GI distress. So that was huge. But even before that, though, I mean, Tim has been using it since early this year. I think it was maybe March or April when he started using it. He used it at Ironman Boulder, where he was able to qualify for Kona on minimal training. I don't know if many of you are following his story. He also had a lot of obstacles this year to overcome. He had an injury earlier this year, a bike crash, and then he broke his foot, I think it was about 6 or 7 weeks before Kona this year. So his run training was minimal, and he still was able to run under 250. Yeah. And during his training, he uses it a lot. I mean, I've never seen anybody use UCAN in such a diverse, thorough, comprehensive way. He uses it pre-workouts. He uses it on, another example, on Terrible Tuesdays, which is a day that he likes to talk about, where he does a hard run in the morning, followed by a hard swim 75 minutes later, then a strength session, and then later in the afternoon, he does a hard bike session. So the whole day is just hit with all these tough sessions. And he used to struggle, especially for the first 2 sessions. He'd have this hard run, and then 75 minutes later have this hard swim. He'd usually be fading halfway through the swim. Now he has UCAN before he goes for his run, nails his run, which he's been able to do pretty often in the past as well. But then when it comes to the swim, he has UCAN, a serving or 2 of UCAN in between the sessions, and now he's been nailing his swim sessions. So now all of a sudden it's even in his training, he's just more consistent. He's nailing his workouts instead of kind of struggling through the second half of that second swim. and then he's able to hit his strength session great, and then he gets a full meal on himself, and then does his ride later in the afternoon and nails that too using UCAN. So he uses UCAN for nearly all of his training. For some of his higher intensity workouts, he'll incorporate some of the high glycemic, but for the most part, it's UCAN, the super starch products, so the performance energy. He uses the bars. One of the favorite ways he likes to use it is a bar with the peanut butter. He takes a chocolate bar and actually puts his own peanut butter or almond butter on top, and then eats it. He just loves that, and he has a couple of those before he goes out for bike rides or brick workouts. And he uses hydrate to replenish. He makes smoothies out of the plain and the vanilla super starch. He loves the vanilla with unsweetened vanilla almond milk. That's what I handed him right after he crossed the finish line in Kona. Well, maybe about 15 minutes after, because there was so much celebration going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, it's just amazing all the ways that he's incorporated it, and definitely kind of a blueprint for a lot of those people who are training pretty hard.
That's my trick too, is to add a little almond butter on the bar, and it's a great little.
Oh yeah, I hadn't heard of that until he told me. Yeah. So you've already charted that territory. Cool.
All right, so that kind of leads us perfect timing into the next screen of the different products, guys. I think it's good to go over when people need the like pre-workout and then post-workout. And I know a lot of people who aren't maybe off-season training as long, and we don't need extra energy, we're burning fat, but we do need electrolytes.
Mm-hmm. And this is a great time to be experimenting with both.
Yeah.
Fat adaptation and UCAN, because it's the off season for most people, and this is just a perfect time to be testing it out. And we'll get in a moment to like maybe the best ways to test it out, or like the best things to pick up so that you could give it a try as far as UCAN is concerned. And yeah, so you see, we kind of went over this a little bit, but on the left side, you see there's a tub and a packet. The packet is a single serve packet. The tub is obviously just a larger, sort of more economical way to do it once you've figured out the flavors that you like and make sure that UCAN is working for you. And orange, cranberry, raspberry, lemon, and plain are your pre and during formulas. And then chocolate and vanilla have protein added to them. So they're great for post-workout recovery. So it's whey protein. So if there's any like vegans or vegetarians or vegans really, then you'll want to stick to the pre and the during. The energy bars are just great for any time. Like they say on the packaging, I have them sitting on my desk so that I could have them while I'm working, preventing those energy lows, especially like the mid-afternoon lows. And then when I take them out on the bike, I bring either a cinnamon bar. I prefer the cinnamon over the coffee, just personally, but even though the coffee is more popular, I bring that out on the bike when it's hot, and then when it's cooler, like in the 60s or 50s or lower, and I'm out on the bike, I'll bring the chocolate or the chocolate peanut butter bars, because I love them even more. And they have the chocolate coating on them, so they melt if it gets too warm, and then it's just a melting mess. So I recommend the cinnamon, the coffee when it's hot out. But right now, most people don't have that problem because it's November. And then hydrate is great for replenishment. It's hydration purely, right? So there's no super starch in it. There's no fuel, no calories. There's no sugar. It's purely electrolytes and just deliciousness. Like the flavors are great. It's naturally sweetened.
Good.
Watermelon's the top seller.
It is? That's
yeah.
funny. I know a lot of people at the swim meet I was at for high schoolers last week, and they were talking about watermelon. It's been out a few years ago. I didn't know it was still a hot thing, but instead of coconut water, it's watermelon water. So maybe people like this without the sugar in it, but the hydration of watermelon must be popular. Mm-hmm. Okay, so next slide, I want to get, here we go. How to use UCAN in your training. So shaking it, gels, you're talking about like cold weather, hot weather, and some people say it doesn't shake well, or if they have like clumps in it. So talk a little bit how to implement the fuel into training when we need extra help.
Totally. Yeah. Especially like the mixing tips. We want you to have a great first UCAN experience. And some people, they don't mix it properly, and then it's clumpy or it's chalky tasting, and they're like, oh, I don't like this. But do it right, and it's good. Most people really enjoy drinking the UCAN and really like it. So the first thing you'll notice that if you get your hands on it, or if you're trying it for the first time, it is different than anything else that's out there. It's not like a Gatorade or something that's very transparent and liquidy. It's more like a shake. All right, so it's a powder that you mix with water. You shake it up, and the way that I recommend to do that best is fill it a bottle with 2/3 water, and then put the super starch in it, whatever flavor you like, or maybe it's the plain, and then shake it, top it off with water, and then shake again. and then put it in the fridge the night before, and then drink it the next morning. So that's sort of the best routine to get the best results. If you do it in a shaker bottle that has like a wire ball in it, it's even better because that'll break it all up and make sure it doesn't get clumpy. And that's it. So it should be nice and smooth. It'll always have some kind of chalky consistency to it, or like a shake-like consistency, because of what it is, but you should enjoy the experience. And if you don't, then feel free to reach out to me, and I can help you troubleshoot that if there's any troubleshooting necessary. So gels, the reason why that's listed here is because when you're running, you don't want to have bottles and bottles of anything in your hands when you're running. Ideally, it's going to be something tiny. And we don't have a gel per se right now, but it's in the works. But for now, people are using like a gel flask, soft or a hard gel flask. It's like a little 5-ounce bottle. Some people even use a Ziploc bag. And you can make a concentrated version of the superstarch in that vehicle, and then tuck that into your shorts while you're running. So that's what I do during an Ironman marathon. I'll have one waiting for me in T2, a gel flask with 1 serving with 3 or 4 ounces of water in it. Run out of T2 with it. At mile 3 or so, after I get settled in, I take that down, and then I'm good through probably about halfway through the Ironman marathon, because a little bit goes a long way with UCAN. And then, hydration's fairly simple. You just 1 serving of the powder into the water, shake it up. That shakes up really easily, and then you have what it is. It's fantastic. And then there's the protein enhanced stuff, which is great for post-workout recovery. People mix that with either milk or unsweetened vanilla almond milk, and it's really good that way.
Wow, really? Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then post-workout, I always find just wait till you're hungry, but you need some protein in there to refuel and help heal your muscles from the workout. So it's good for recovery. So having it afterwards is the protein one. Or do you add protein to it, or you just keep it as is?
I usually just have it as is. I prefer the vanilla. Most people actually prefer the chocolate. Again, I'm against the trend on that one, but they're both great. And I mix the vanilla with, if I have whole milk in the fridge, I'll use that. If it's unsweetened vanilla almond milk, I'll go with that. And I have that right after my hard workouts. Sometimes I'll even have it as a meal replacement, because it's going to provide steady energy, and it's delicious. And it has some protein in there that's going to help you with that post-workout recovery. Some people will take like extra whey or pea protein, whatever protein source of their choice, powder, and they'll add it to the UCAN to enhance the protein content. But that's sort of just up to you, whether you want to do that or not.
Okay, I'll go to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And then racing, and we'll get to questions in 5 more minutes. So if you guys have questions, just type them in, and we'll get to them in about 5 more minutes.
Great. Yeah. So I'll go very quickly over this. I think if people have specific questions, then they can come to me if they want to like send me their plan, their nutrition plan for a race, and then have me, bounce it off of me to see if I have some suggestions. But just as a general rule of thumb, before racing and training, you're going to have 1 serving before you go out, about 20, 30, maybe up to 45 minutes before you go. And that's going to last you 90 minutes to 2 hours. So for a sprint, all you need to do is have 1 serving before, and then you're good to go. You don't need anything during, except for maybe some water and electrolytes. For an Olympic, you really don't need much. I usually have 1 serving during the bike, and that'll cover the bike and the run. And I have the 1 serving prior to the swim as well. Sometimes I'll even go 2 servings just to make sure. If you're going to be out there for more like 3 or 4 or 5 hours for an Olympic distance, then you might want to take 2 or 3 servings when you're out on the bike. So like it says here, 1 serving for each hour. So typically when you're in your training, we'll say 1 serving for 90 minutes per 90 minutes. So if you're doing like a 4.5 hour bike ride, you might have 3 servings with you. If you're racing, we typically will recommend something like 1 serving per hour. So the intensity level's higher, it's sustained at higher intensity. You tend to burn through more based off those curves, right? You're burning more glycogen at those intensities. And so 1 serving per hour tends to be a better dosage. But again, everybody's different, so you're going to have to test it out in your own training and in your own racing to make sure that those dosages are good. You might need a little more, you might need less. Especially if you're a fat adapted athlete, some of those fat adapted athletes will have 1 serving, and it's good for up to 2 hours. And then that's really it. And some people like to combine UCAN with fast acting carbs, like your typical gels and sports drinks that are sugary. Sometimes, especially late in the race, like it kind of helps trigger reward centers in the brain when you have some of the higher glycemic carbohydrates. And like I said, Tim O'Donnell uses it during his racing and his high intensity efforts. He does mix it with the fast carbs, but test it out. See, some people really like to have UCAN purely. Some people like to have UCAN and fast carbs during their higher intensity efforts. You just kind of have to figure out what works best for you.
Exactly. I keep saying everybody is different. There is not one size fits all. You have to tweak it. Here's kind of a starting point and tweak it to figure out what amount works best for you, because everyone tries to copy what someone else does. And like, that's a starting point, but then you might need less or more, and not everyone's the same. Okay. So let's move on to looking at, we have a special offer for everyone. If they want to purchase, they can use the code The Whole Athlete, or Whole Athlete without the. So you guys can see, what do you have, Matt, for them? The Tri-Starter Pack.
Yep. So I'll send you the link so that we can share that with everyone. Okay. But that's typically $30. It's got a smattering of our different products so that you can, it's like a variety pack, so you can try out the different flavors and formats. And we're offering that to you for 50% off for your listeners because we just want to get it into people's hands. And once they try it, most people are like, hey, this stuff's awesome. It really is living up to what that crazy guy Matt was saying. And then they become customers. So we're perfectly happy offering it at 50% off for you guys. And then a Whole Athlete, for those who want to stock up on tubs and things, you can use that for 15% off. And that doesn't expire. So you can use that for your subsequent purchases as well.
Wow, that's a good deal. Okay, so questions will go to the Q&A area, and the ones we had, both of us have heard a lot on social media. UCAN is a carb, so why is it good for fat adapted? Should I do my workouts fasted or with UCAN? Do you have to be fat adapted to use the UCAN? So we'll talk about all those. Let me go first to the few questions we have here. So you ready to go?
Sure, yeah.
All right. So first one is, what is the difference between the various UCAN products, and when should I be using the product with added protein, for instance? We might have just answered that, but.
Yeah, I think we probably answered that. But one other thing that I might mention is that even though we say that the protein enhanced ones are great for post-workout as recovery, it is great for that. And that's why we created it in the first place. But we found that because it's still mostly super starch and it's a relatively low level of protein, it's only 10 grams of protein, people will actually use it before and during as well. And sometimes it's because they just like the flavor better. And then sometimes it's because the protein helps with satiety, kind of curbing some hunger. And some people will like doing that during their races, especially if they're out there for hours and hours and hours. Maybe they're only on a fluid-only diet. They're just having the UCAN Performance Energy and no bars. And so they'll go with they'll mix in some of the vanilla and the chocolate, so that way they kind of get some of that protein to help satiate them. And just a note with the bars, you could, during racing and training, you could basically think of the bars as a 1-to-1 substitute with the Performance Energy servings. So one scoop should last 1 hour to 90 minutes to 2 hours even. A bar is going to basically do the same thing, approximately 90 minutes.
Okay. And then I see the other question, she said ignore the first question. So she got that, but we got extra answer there. So how does UCAN differ from its uses from Vespa? Because a lot of people in these fat adapted groups, we keep hearing, and we've had him on the podcast, Peter Defty, and he talks about Vespa and how a lot of people use both. So talk about how, it differs.
Yeah, I've heard that quite a bit, that people like to use them in conjunction. I think it's probably coming from Peter quite a bit, that he's talking about using it in conjunction. So both serve the fat adapted athlete really well because of the fact that they're not spiking blood sugar so much. So you could probably speak more to the Vespa side of things. I'm somewhat familiar, but you're probably more familiar with them. I know that UCAN as a company, we've had some of our employees have like sort of events done in conjunction with the guys over at Vespa. But go ahead and maybe tell us more about the Vespa.
Well, I'll do another one with Peter, but we just had a webinar with them, so you guys can go back and look at the Whole Athlete podcast, because I think I put it out as a podcast episode for the audio part of it. But I think a lot of it's what you're saying is that added sugar, that higher glycemic boost that you can add in. So I think if you're using it kind of like as a gel, have it instead of a gel, use the Vespa. So as you're saying, use UCAN for that steady flow, but when you need that extra boost and you're doing maybe a higher intensity exercise session, so higher heart rate, or, like I have some people that I was talking to you about earlier that are swim meets and they need a little extra fuel, and then maybe you're having the UCAN and then you have a break between your training like T.O. did, and you need a UCAN and then a little extra boost if you're doing a higher intensity event of swimming, or people the obstacle course racing and stuff like that. But I think that's what Vesta's for, more of a, like when you need a little extra carb. And the steady fuel that UCAN does is good for the before, during, and after, right? What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds fair to me. That's how a lot of people use the higher glycemic, or not necessarily high glycemic, but the bigger boost stuff. They might use it in conjunction for those reasons.
And then making the gel, do you need extra water with it to digest it? So beyond the main amount you've made with it. So I know when I'm racing again next year, so I'll be using this all again. But when I had a container of UCAN, I'd have a bottle of water as well. So I think she's asking with the gel, do you drink it with water because you need to kind of help digest it more with extra water?
Yeah, that's a good question. That certainly could have been listed as another one of those common questions on this list. So the short answer is no. Because of the osmolality being so low with UCAN, you can actually drink that gel or suck down that gel, and you don't necessarily need any additional water to digest it. But because it's so thick, you're going to want something to help, like, kind of wash it down. So in my own experience, like I'll take a swig or a gulp of the UCAN gel. It is thick and pasty at that concentration. It's pretty thick and pretty kind of chalky. So I'll have that, and then I'll wash it down with something else, mainly because of desire, not necessarily because you have to from like a function standpoint.
Yeah, and that's probably just the right amount when you're in a race and they have the little tiny baby cups of water that you get a 2-ounce sip of. So maybe take a swig of your gel when you're reaching that aid station, then have a swig of water, and then keep going. Okay, one more question here is when making, no, wait, that's all we had, the gel, that was the same thing. So we've got all the questions there. If you guys have any more, you can type them in. And then what other questions here, Matt, on the screen that we heard on Facebook group pages? How about the fasted? I think that's a great question. Should I do my workout fasted or do it with UCAN?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. And I think there's still some science to really be done there, some research to be done there, but as far as like how it impacts your fat adaptation. But because of the fact that like the reason why people do workouts fasted is because they want to stoke their body's ability to burn fat. So instead of consuming something before your workout, you go out and you do it fasted. And it forces your body to rely on what it has in your system, which is probably a somewhat depleted glycogen stores and then mainly fat. Now, the sort of the problem with that is because a lot of the workouts that you end up doing maybe aren't quite the highest quality, because you go out into that workout and you might start fading later on because you're purely relying on fat. And so it does do the job of kind of over time in the longer term, making you better at being fat adapted. But it sacrifices the quality, at least in the short term for sure, of some of those workouts. So where UCAN comes in is stabilizing your blood sugar, but giving you an energy source. So that's the thing, is like UCAN it's like a carb that isn't like a carb, right? So super starches. So it's giving you energy without the spike and crash. So it allows you to remain in fat burning mode, but it's giving you energy. So you're able to execute and have high quality workouts, sort of getting the best of both worlds, right? You're keeping the blood sugar stable, you're keeping the insulin levels muted, allowing your body to remain in fat burning mode, but you're also having an energy source that allows you to nail those workouts. So typically we'll recommend, you could try both and see how you feel in both, but typically having one serving before workouts up to 90 minutes to 2 hours or so beforehand, then that's going to set you up really well to have a good workout and stay in fat burning mode.
And I would also suggest, the next question too, the same thing. Do you have to be fat adapted to use UCAN? But I think testing with I use Keto Mojo, but testing your blood glucose to know, is this working for me? So figuring out, what to eat, but the feeling, and also evaluating your own workout performance. You kind of know if you have a crappy workout or not, if you need a little extra energy. So kind of observing what you're doing. If you're doing a fasted workout and your workout's like, it was, not my best. And maybe you do need to add a little bit more fuel to it. And especially the type of workout you're doing, because it depends on the focus of the workout. Maybe if it's higher heart rates, you're doing some interval training, or you're doing, heavy lifting and, brick workouts. I think everyone's so different. So I think it's, N=1 and experiment with your own fuel plan without anything, and then with UCAN, and just see how your performance is.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also about the intensity, like when you're talking about going out for like, let's say a 1 hour or 45-minute steady state zone 1 or 2 workout, doing a workout fasted could be perfectly acceptable, and you might feel perfectly fine for that workout. But whereas if you're going to do like, say, a 75-minute run with some intervals in it, then you're probably going to want to have some UCAN so that you could really nail that. And then as far as like the fat adapted to be UCAN, that's a question that comes up so often. People, I think because of some of the early, and I'm actually writing a blog on this right now, but it's because of some of the people early on in our days, like Bob Seebahar and like Dr. Jeff Folick, and they've done some amazing work in spreading the word about UCAN because they're such huge fans of it, and it's something that's truly revolutionary. So they've spread the word about it, but because of that, and because they are fat adapted, low carb, high fat kind of athletes, fat adapted athletes, then people have kind of, I think, made this association between UCAN and being fat adapted. And while fat adapted absolutely fits into the fat adapted community because of these features of stable blood sugar and muted insulin, you don't need to be fat adapted to use UCAN. And that's because of those benefits that I explained earlier about the steady energy, the no GI distress, the lack of sugar or very low sugar. All those benefits really apply regardless of whether you're fat adapted or not. So if you end up like exploring with fat adaptation and then you decide maybe it's not right for you and you decide not to, you could still use UCAN. It's not something like, actually it kind of ties into the next question about S-fuels where it's purely meant for people that are fat adapted, whereas UCAN is not. UCAN can be used by guys like Tim O'Donnell or guys or athletes like Mebka Flesky and Dathan Ritzenheim and Matt Sharbat and a former pro triathlete. A number of people who are not low carb, high fat athletes or not fat adapted athletes, but who use UCAN very effectively.
Now, how do you define fat adapted? Do you find that I'm sure they're eating good, clean food. They're not eating a bunch of crap and processed foods. I'm sure they're professional athletes, I would hope, are eating the real food, but just different macronutrients ratio, but not necessarily keto to speak, that they're keeping the carbs, super low. So that's what I'd be curious of, what is their nutrition plan per day that makes them, because they have to be metabolically efficient to, work on improving that endurance in their fat adaptation process, but they may not necessarily be consuming a low carb, high fat diet, you're saying.
Exactly. So a lot of them are not in ketosis or low carb, high fat athletes, but they are, because the fat adaptation is coming from, they are fat adapted to some degree, right? Because the fat adaptation is coming from a couple of different places, really. It's your training is stoking fat adaptation just because you're training, endurance training, right? So they're doing tons of that, right? They're doing 20 plus, 30 plus sometimes hours a week because that's all they do. And that's their life. And they're doing lots and lots and lots of zone 2, zone 1, zone 3 type training that's making them better, more efficient metabolically, more efficient aerobically, and just more efficient overall, economically, biomechanically. So this efficiency is coming from the fact that they're just doing so much of it, including metabolically. So they are fat adapted to a pretty fair degree because of that. And they're also, if they are, say, like a more moderate type carbohydrate approach, that's also kind of could contribute to some of that fat adaptation. But they aren't necessarily, like all the ones that we listed, aren't necessarily eating like a low carb type of diet. But we don't all have really that benefit or the luxury of training 20 plus, 30 plus hours a week. So we have to rely, or we choose to rely on food to maybe help us be more fat adapted, because that's where the other part of it is coming from, the way that you eat on a daily basis. Now that's in Michael Andrew, I mentioned earlier, I should have kind of mentioned, but he is a keto athlete. So many of you may already be familiar with that because he's a keto athlete and he's performing at the top of his game. I mean, he is an absolutely amazing swimmer. He was the youngest person to ever go pro as a swimmer. He was 14 years old. I mean, the kid was in high school and he went pro. So I call him a kid, but he's really like, I mean, he's still young, but he's an adult at this point. And he's looking to be in Tokyo next year. So. Wow.
The new Michael Phelps.
Yeah. Many people are likening them for sure.
All right. And then did you add anything on there? Do you want to add anything on S-fuels versus UCAN? Because I know that's.
I mean, I think if people like really are curious, they can dive into that. But like really the differences there, the S-fuels is mainly, it's really only for fat adapted athletes. And that's because two of their formulations, their non-race formulations, really don't have calories in them, or they don't have carbohydrates in them. They have fat, or like MCT oil. The S-fuels race does have some carbohydrates in it. It's actually it's steadier than maltodextrin, but not as steady as superstarch. So yeah, how much should I be taking in when training and racing? That last question on there is kind of already touched on, but maybe more of a general question, not necessarily with UCAN. So I don't know if we want to dive into that at all, but I think a lot of people are kind of curious, and I touched on it in my own story where 300 calories an hour is kind of the target for a lot of people, but 100 calories an hour or less is potentially what you could race on when you're fat adapted or using UCAN or both.
Good. All right. So I know we had a question just added in on what the code was. So we'll put that all in the notes. What was the discount code, Matt? You want just the whole type in when they go to UCAN, they get the 50% off if they type in whole athlete, WHOLE. Is that what we're saying? I can go back. Wait. Slide.
Yeah, that's 15% on anything on the website through whole athlete. And then I gotta send you the link on the Tri Starter Pack, because that one is the variety pack that is 50% off for the mix, and that one's through a link.
Okay, I will send that out to those that registered for the webinar. And the holistic method program I have works on the 8 elements of the holistic method to help transform the whole athlete from the inside out. So that's working on your nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress, mobility, digestion, and gut health, hydration's the 7th element, and the 8th element is happiness. Because I think a little too many people are a little uptight and type A, AAA. So having more fun in life is good to do. And then what I'm doing more is focusing on in 2020, helping heal and rebuild athletes with functional lab testing and helping you resolve your metabolic chaos we talk about. So we've got lots of podcasts and webinars coming up on that, because I think a lot of athletes who don't use UCAN and are using sugar and are overtraining under recovery are increasing their damage to their body and burning out and breaking down their body rather than building it up. So there's different things to look at. If you are struggling with weight gain and fatigue and poor recovery, you might want to go a little deeper and look at the different factors that contribute to performance and longevity issues. So working on repairing, rebuilding, recalibrating the whole you with some functional labs. I would love to get more athletes in that. So UCAN, again, we'll send out the link, and any other questions you guys have, we've got Matt's email on there. And then I'll check one last one. Oh, it says Canada. You ship it to Canada as well, or other countries?
We actually have a distributor in Canada. They're great, and they can ship you products in Canada. So we don't ship across border, but we have that distributor that can do that for you. So it's smartperformancenutrition.ca.
Okay, let's get that. So that is all for our webinar today. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will make sure the link is updated for the UCAN discount code. And any questions you have, just reach out to Matt or myself, and then we'll do more webinars in the new year, and hopefully maybe talk to T.O. about what he's been doing after he's finished his busy post-Ironman media tour. I'm sure everyone has questions. So it's great for UCAN. You guys are getting your name out there.
Yeah, definitely. We had him on the UCAN show, so you can check our YouTube channel, the Generation UCAN or UCAN YouTube channel. We have an interview with him, which was 9 days after Kona, kind of going over everything, and it was great. And then he's also going to be racing Ironman Cozumel for his sort of validation, so that he's all qualified and ready to go for next year for Kona. So that he's racing that this weekend.
You know, side note, all these people are racing Ironman. These pros that just did Ironman Hawaii are all doing Ironman Arizona or Cozumel, and I hope they take some time off and recover and repair. It seems like a little too soon.
Tim does a good job of that. He's 39 years old now, so he's done a good job of making it sustainable for him, and he hasn't fallen into the traps that a lot of people fall in of racing and being ultimately crazy fit all year round. So he's really just using this as an opportunity to check the box so he can go to Kona next year without having to worry about it doing an Ironman next year, unless he chooses to. And then he's going to take some good time off around the holidays. So
All right, good. All right, thanks, Matt, for your time. And again, you guys can find me on debbiepotts.net or Matt on Generation UCAN, and his email is on the screen below. So we'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.